I've always said that price lags hash rate, that hash rate precedes price. And so we're going to see new all-time highs in the hash rate and followed by new all-time highs in Bitcoin price. The underlying fundamentals have only gotten stronger. The fiat money world is crumbling. Inflation is out of control. The Bitcoin network is getting stronger. If you look at the on-chain analysis, that is to say, the people who are actually doing transactions, not derivatives, but on the actual Bitcoin blockchain, we see an increase in the holdings of Bitcoin. The recent price action is driven mostly by derivatives. So the same kind of price discovery you see in the gold market that's kept gold now flat for 10 years and hasn't really budged at all. You start to see some of the derivatives have an influence on the price discovery in Bitcoin. Ultimately, it doesn't matter because the demand for Bitcoin is virtually infinite because fiat money is, as it always does, it's going to go to zero. All fiat money goes to zero, and we'll see that with the US dollar as well. Bitcoin competes with gold. It's going to get a market share of gold. Gold's market share is about $8, $9, $10 trillion. Bitcoin is going to eclipse that market cap at some point. So all the fundamentals are very strong. So I'm just bumping my $220,000 target from 2021 to 2022. I've been doing well for the past 10 years since I first recommended Bitcoin at $1. I'm not really a trader. I'm a holder. I'm a hodler. And I don't invest in Bitcoin. I divest out of fiat money and I divest out of gold. And I'd rather be a day early than a day late. As you see, Jay Powell and the central banks around the world are in panic mode. They're printing at a level that you'd have to compare to Weimar Germany or Zimbabwe, and they're literally about to torch this economy and the fiat money world down to the ground. So there's only one unconfiscatable, uncensorable money in the world, and that's Bitcoin. And that's the fundamental story. So you should own it. You should own it aggressively. And this particular drawdown is not particularly worrisome. It's a great buying opportunity. People are always saying, oh, Bitcoin at 75,000 or 65,000 is too expensive. I wish it were cheaper. Well, okay, it's cheaper. So you should be backing up the truck, loading the boat aggressively. Only have money in fiat shitcoins or gold that you're willing to lose. Any money you have in Bitcoin is unconfiscatable, it's uncensorable. That's your only wealth. That is your only wealth, is your Bitcoin wealth. Everything else is confiscatable or going to be inflated away out of existence. The average miner's cost per Bitcoin is under $8,000 per coin. So at these levels, it's a wildly profitable business. And you're going to see more and more countries start to mine Bitcoin. I think once a country in the G7 starts to accumulate and mine Bitcoin, it'll set off like a space race that we saw in the 60s where the Soviets put up the Sputnik satellite and it launched the space race and a man landing on the moon. I think once a G7 country comes out and says, hey, we're adding Bitcoin to our reserves, we're mining Bitcoin, then you're going to see other countries say, hey, we got to get in on this. The US will come in. The US will come in and start to mine Bitcoin. This is the power of Bitcoin. It shows you what you can do with unconfiscatable, uncensorable, perfect money. You start to think differently about the world around you and the governments around you. This is the same thing we've been seeing for 20 years. The Fed threatens taper and then they loosen policy. It never happens. Inflation under Paul Volcker's time was racing higher than, less than it is right now. And Volcker took interest rates up to 15, 16%, right? So they're already way behind the curve. Interest rates to deal with the current inflation should already be 8, 9, 10% on the overnight rates at the Fed. That's the way it should be if they were doing their job correctly. So why don't they do it? Well, for one thing, the duration risk of the Fed's balance sheet is way out on the curve. So even a 1 basis point rise in rates totally obliterates the Fed's balance sheet. They're in the weakest position they've ever been. So too with every central bank in the world. They're not going to taper. If you're not a friend of Goldman Sachs, you live in a Bantustan, you live in a ghetto of high interest rates, and you're squeezed, and you never get to save any money. But if you're a friend of Goldman Sachs, you get to borrow at 0%, invest in assets, and you collectively are buying the same assets. Those go up in price, then you can use those as collateral to borrow more money and just repeat this over and over again. That's why the wealth and income gap, the wealth gap is so high in America. It's higher now than even during the robber baron era because of this interest rate apartheid engineered by the Fed, condoned by Nancy Pelosi. And this is why Bitcoin is going to, $220,000 in the short term and going a lot higher as interest rates and the dollar create this insurmountable obstacle for anyone trying to save money who's not in Bitcoin. In the short term, you have derivatives traders and derivatives markets, and you do have a lot of the games that we see in various markets will have an impact on the short term on price. But if you look at the long-term chart, look at the 10-year chart, you see a very orderly, ascent higher, and that will continue really for during the course of everyone who's watching this during their lifetime. That will be the course of the price. It'll just continue to go up over your lifetime, my lifetime, and everyone who's watching this over their lifetime.